Okay, in the next interview for the members of HYPIA, the International Association of Hyperpolyglots, our non-profit organization commit to spread multilingualism, we have here with us Olga Koeva. She is from Schumann, Bulgaria, right now living in Regensburg in Germany. And she is a student of international relations, and also she is concertist of sacred music. So welcome, Olga. Dobrodošli.
Thank you very much, Mati. Hello, everyone, dear linguistic nerds, language enthusiasts, polyglots, hyperpolyglots, members and non-members of HYPIA. Thank you very much for having me here, and I would be really glad to make this interview with you and for you, dear audience.
Thank you, Olga. Okay, and tell me about, well, as you know that one of the objectives, one of the goals of HYPIA, is to spread multilingualism. We used to say to foster and to encourage mutual human understanding through the knowledge of language and culture diversity. Which advantages and which features, which characteristics, which things you think that HYPIA contributes to you as a member, and which characteristics do you think that HYPIA HYPIA contributes to make a better society?
So, in my opinion, HYPIA really helps, as you said, spreading multilingualism and cultural diversity, because the members of HYPIA are really from different cultures. So, like by communicating with them, with all of you, so I learn not only much about linguistics, multilingualism, and so on, but also about different cultures, characteristics of different cultures. So how, for example, one behaves in one society or another society. So it's really interesting to be a member of HYPIA.
What do you feel when you arrive for the first time to our group with more than 250 members of more than 60 nationalities, who speaks among us more than 160 languages and more than 180 if we count dialects? Which feeling at the first time you have, for example, when do you feel warmth, communication, culture exchange, we share different information associated on how do languages and cultures, because not only we learn about grammar and different language structures, on different techniques on how do we learn languages, but also to learn about different cultures and how do we feel that cultures through learning a language. Develop your opinion.
Yeah, so of course, I like the first time I wrote to a group, I was really impressed that there are so many polyglots that share different cultures, and so I was really excited to learn something new about cultures, about also about different languages. Yeah, of course. So language and culture, they interact with each other. So in my opinion, in my opinion, it's like learning about languages. So you learn automatically about different cultures. So, for example, if you want to express something in idiomatic way. It's also a part of the culture of a society, not only the part of the language, for example. So I think these things, so languages and cultures, they relate to each other, so they're coexistent. Yeah.
Despite language and culture are not necessarily the same thing, or not necessarily one language is related to one culture, not necessarily one thing fits to the other. To learn a culture helps to learn a language, and to learn a language helps to understand a culture better. How is true? How does that assertion is true for you?
I think that both statements are true, because like learning a language helps you understand how a certain culture functions, because you learn, like when you study a language, so you learn about traditions, customs of a culture, don't know, values, beliefs, and so on, because such subjects are like discussed in textbooks, if you like, or in books, in literature, when you read, for example, literature in order to improve your language skills, and so on. So the other way around, it would be also true, in my opinion, because if you study, for example, about a certain culture, so you learn about its characteristics and so on, and it's like obvious that you will learn some terms, or some terms in a language, in the local language, when you study about a culture. So and if you want to learn the language like later on, so you will already know these terms so regarding the culture, so it will help you to understand the language as well, so to learn the language, and to understand the language. Yeah. For example, if you study about the Chinese culture, for example, you learn what Guangxi is. Guangxi, like
Exactly.
space.
Well,
yeah.
continue, продолжите.
And then when you like want to study Chinese later on, so and you will like find the term Guangxi in a textbook or wherever. So of course you will remember that you've learned it in a culture, in your studies of culture. So it will be like better to understand this term like from the linguistic point of view as well. Yeah.
That's the point. We know that as polyglots, as hyperpolyglots, we have our own personal story regarding our language learning process that we can read from our HYPIA profiles. But we have, all of us, a common denominator, not only 6, 7, 8 languages or more, but also we have a common denominator in our language learning process that's regarding that for every language, we develop a special connection. And for every language, we develop a special relationship. And even though for those hyperpolyglots, for those members of HYPIA, even though for every language you learn, you develop a different personality. I mean, and there's a lot of there are a lot of examples of in which languages I sound more childish or more serious, or I perceive those certain languages are less or less serious or less. For example, I perceive that, for example, language like German, Dutch, or even Japanese are associated with strict discipline. And for that reason, I sometimes perceive that if you commit a mistake in those languages, you are not well understood. But in other languages, maybe for example, even though Spanish or Portuguese, that the criteria is much more loose, much relaxed. Up to a certain point, I felt that feeling. What's your opinion about that? Every one of us, we have our own perception of which language. I mean, everybody of us, we have a personal story of in language.
So for me, I wouldn't say that some languages sound serious or not serious to me. So like every language I've studied or am studying or want to study has its own melody. And
exactly.
I think that
well,
every language has its own melody. Yes.
Every language is worth learning without exception. We don't doubt about it.
No. Regarding your example of making mistakes and like maybe the desire of the other to want to understand you or not, it depends. So it depends, because in German it's often the case that if you make mistakes, then people can tell you that they don't understand you and so on. But it's not like with every person. It's often the case, but yeah, it depends. With Dutch, I haven't noticed that. With Dutch, I can only remember like the feedback that I received from someone regarding my accent, because they thought that I was from Belgium, even though I didn't or don't speak with the Flemish accent, but with the Dutch one. So people thought I was from Belgium. But about mistakes, I don't remember. And regarding Japanese, so I'm not an expert. I'm dreaming to study this language at a high level, like relatively high level, of course. And communicating with Japanese people in the future, I will maybe notice something regarding mistakes, but now I can't express my opinion about Japanese. Yeah.
Well, not everybody have the same fluency in every one of the areas of language learning. I mean, when we are evaluated in official certification in that language, you know that we have 4 areas: written production, listening comprehension, speaking, and reading. Well, but not everybody have the same fluency in those areas, because for example, when I can say, for example, that I have a B1 in French. However, my reading level is is almost perfect. I can express myself in French more or less accurately. I have a very good written production, but when it talk about my listening comprehension, is a 2. Because even though I have some kind of troubles with the listening to press conferences, for example. But when I try to make my international exam of A2 in Greek, and despite having a A2 or B1 speaking in Greek, well, I failed that exam because of the called paragogik graptulou, I mean the written production. So not everybody has the same four areas at the same level, and especially it's true for those who learn languages as an autodidact. I mean, and so that question I want to say is that about learning languages. Every one of us has our own methodology, and I want to talk about you about your own learning method or our own methodology, and especially about the self-taught, the autodidact versus the mainstream way to learn languages.
Yeah, so I've learned, let's say, 95%, 97% of all the languages I speak as an autodidact, like by myself. And I did it the following way. I used like textbooks, grammar, exercises with CDs as well in order to listen to native speakers. And another way of improvement of my listening was always a text-to-speech software that I had on my computer and that I turned on and, for example, clicked on separate words in my lesson in the Word document, for example, and let the synthetic voice repeat them. And so I was repeating them as well, and in this way I was improving my pronunciation. The textbooks I used were most of them were from Germany, and this is like a common system for self-studying here in Germany from the Langenscheidt edition. And these books are like depending on the language, but most of them are, like of the European languages, are until B1 level. And then I continued studying with another, like with other textbooks, but for advanced level, like B2 maybe. And in parallel, like by studying this B2 with these B2 textbooks, I was always started reading some literature and listening to the radio, for example, or sometimes watching videos on YouTube, and of course communicating with friends of mine by email or by WhatsApp, like WhatsApp calls and so on. So for me, as an autodidact, reading is really essential. So when you read literature, you learn so much in language. So you learn so many nuances, you learn idiomatic expressions, you learn synonyms, you learn many things. So like the way of like expression in formal or informal situations, it's really important. So I would encourage everyone to read books in his or her target language. Yeah, and what I've also used and what's important to me as well are professional dictionaries. when checking the new words or something. So I always use professional dictionaries like bilingual or monolingual. So the bilingual dictionaries are that I have are through German, and the monolingual, so it depends. I have like for English, for example, the Oxford Dictionary of English. For Dutch is the Dicke van Dale, or from of Spanish it's from the Real Academia
La Real Academia
Española.
Española.
Yes, or from for Portuguese I have two. One for Brazilian Portuguese, this Aurelio, and the other for Portuguese from Portugal, Dicionário de Língua Portuguesa, for example. And for I think it's from Camões. I have to check it. I'm not sure. Maybe it's from Camões. Yes. So that's my method. Reading, like studying grammar, the very, very, very classical, conservative, old-fashioned manner, and then reading, listening, communicating. Yeah.
Well,
but without grammar, so for me, like for my taste, right, it's in my opinion. So I could never learn a language without understanding the grammar.
Exactly.
It's absolutely, yeah.
In fact, you know that I used to describe grammar as a swimming pools, where the walls and the floor of the swimming pool is the grammar and the water is the vocabulary. In my opinion, I don't care if I jump from a 10-meter platform with a swimming pool with a quarter of water. I jump anyway, springen. So
yeah, you jump.
That's why, for example, there are several people like me, several polyglots like me, who has the tendency to speaking rather than listening, or speaking rather than understanding or listening comprehension.
Yeah, speaking from day one. Yes, I respect this method. It maybe it works for someone else, but it doesn't work for me. For example, I have first to learn the basic vocabulary, learn the grammar, and then to start speaking. But speaking from day one, it's really an interesting method. I was recently listening to another polyglot who explained this, and it worked for him very well, and he made much progress. So yeah, it's like there is not the best or the worst method, you know. It's like everyone should choose his or her own method that
exactly
suits him or her the best, of course. So speaking from day one, it's an interesting method. Yeah,
exactly. You know, there are hyperpolyglots who prefer to be very grammar oriented. We both of us are very grammar oriented, but there are also polyglots that prefer to learn languages in a much natural way, because as language is extremely interconnected with the culture, there are some people who prefer simply to feel the language, to sing, to eat, to drink, to dance, and even though to make love with languages.
Yeah. So in my methodology, I don't exclude, for example, singing or listening to music in the target language. Of course, I listen to to music or songs or classical pieces. It depends in this target language, and try to understand the lyrics or study lyrics and sing them by myself. Yeah, of course. But I've heard about these polyglots that apply this immersion method of immersion.
Exactly, in a more immersive way.
Yeah, in a more immersive manner. Yeah.
About the mainstream methodology, I mean, about the mainstream structure versus the self-taught or autodidact structure. You know that there are very little about the minority languages or about the endangered languages. there are little or few, yeah, there are very little academic offer, but a matter of concern about HYPIA and about hyperpolyglots is the imposition of the mainstream languages or the most well-spoken languages, basically because of how, for example, the families migrate from other countries with better economy, but most languages, most mainstream languages are mainstream just because of the pressure market. For HYPIA, it's a matter of concern that there are minority or endangered language, or even though official languages with very few million speakers, that little by little are everybody going towards English or towards mainstream language due to the pressure market. For example, in Bulgaria, despite being a member of the European Union, we have, in Bulgaria, there are 8 million inhabitants. Well, but why, for example, I'm not talking about the case of your family that you went to Germany because of your music studies, but there are a lot of workers from other minority countries that migrate to more powerful countries just in order to get a better job or just to get a better market. Just to get better opportunities, and that implies to study a mainstream language in process in several cases. They sometimes been forced to not speak in their own language, and here in HYPIA we defend minority languages or languages spoken by few people because we have to encourage multilingualism. It's a matter of concern. Well, what's your opinion about that?
Yeah, of course. So there are many languages that disappear, and I think that HYPIA should encourage minority languages, like to conserve them, to like that they're developed in the future, so on. And it's really a sad situation in, for example, Latin American countries where indigenous languages are about to disappear, and where people are not allowed to speak them or to write in them, so to use them in written form. And it's really sad for me, because these indigenous languages, they are the part of one's culture, So I think that HYPIA should motivate people to improve and to develop these minority languages, dialects, whatever, because every language is like part of a culture, part of a society, and if it disappears, so society will also disappear. Like the identity of a society, of a culture, like the cultural identity of a society or of a group will disappear.
By the way, the ability of hyperpolyglots. Okay, next question. The ability of hyperpolyglots to change from one linguistic structure to another. The knowledge of different grammar structures and how we decode. As you know that languages are strictly interconnected with with mathematics, and we have a lot of memorization of vocabulary, hundreds and thousands of words. As you are an expert in music, you know that to memorize sounds and musical notes, it's like a language. It's do you feel that there's some kind of interconnection of this?
Yeah,
it's very funny, very curious.
Yeah, so of course it's like a language, like the note system, music, like it's an own language that everyone understands. So cannot be denied that music connects people. So even though you like we speak different languages, but we understand all the language of the music. And yes, it's also interconnected with language learning, because since my memory is really well trained to memorize melodies, lyrics, like for example lyrics of classical pieces of music, like songs or arias or plain chants, whatever. It also helps me to memorize vocabulary or grammar or whatever of language. And another interaction that I have discovered for me personally is the relationship between singing and studying a language, because when you sing, so you can improve your pronunciation, because when you sing, so you have time to analyze every sound, every vowel, consonant, whatever, and improve your pronunciation. So it's really useful to sing in a target language, and I would recommend this to every polyglot.
Of course,
musically,
do you know
talented.
that for example, I'm learning Macedonian, my 15th language, and it's despite I have some basic knowledge of Polish and Croatian, I mean, I feel very proud to say that Macedonian is my first Slavic language that I can hold some kind of conversation. And I used to listen a lot of music from Macedonian artists, for example, Knockout, Black Kolozanowski, etc., and or Olga Koeva. And I learned a lot of vocabulary, and I learned a lot learning Macedonian through the music. And it's very interesting. Gozakam mnogu, goiskam mnogu. About you know that there are 4 factors of destruction of languages and cultures: territorial conquest, religious imposition, economic interests, and cultural industry. You know that despite I said in my profile that there's I mean, there are not such I mean, a few languages in 100 years, one of the questions of the interview. But however, despite that, I feel very, very concerned about how we can preserve languages and cultures. So I know that we have spoken about that, but how? I mean, do you feel that this assertion be true? There will be the chance that us as hyperpolyglots can be more active in defending those minorities, those cultures, in order not to lose them?
I think that HYPIA as an organization could become more active in this regard. If there are, for example, members that like HYPIA members that, for example, teach minority languages or have access to minority language, so they could, for example, develop like materials, textbooks, or websites where
there are, but
can
not
study.
There are, but not enough. And sometimes,
not enough, yeah.
And sometimes there are countries whose minority languages only can be taught in private schools. And I mean, as they are taught in private schools, there are some printed material, but there are languages with no material at all.
Yep.
And tell me which I mean, about your favorite languages. Which language do you feel that they are your favorite, and why? I mean, tell me about a funny story about that.
So for the time being, or at the moment, how bizarre! I have no favorite language.
Me neither.
In my opinion,
I love languages. I love languages.
Yeah.
Like I used to say that languages are fruits.
Yeah.
Do you do? For example, do you know that I, I, I used to say languages are fruits. You want to eat strawberry, orange, banana, pineapple, blueberry, mango, raspberry,
Mango,
kiwi.
papaya.
Yeah, melon, watermelon. Some fruits you have already eaten. I mean, you have learned those languages. Other fruits you are still eating or in the process of eating because they are difficult languages. You don't want to keep eating them, or because lack of time. Other fruits you let away, but you want to eat all those fruits. Yeah.
Of course. So I agree with you, like partly about this statement. But first, let me tell you about like my relationship to favorite languages and so on. Because earlier, when I was a teenager, I had favorite language, and it was German. I had this opinion that German, it wasn't, still is, it is very melodic language. It has its own melody, and I didn't like or I didn't want to hear the stereotype from, for example, friends of mine or whatever, that language, the German language is a very rough or rude or something. In my opinion, it was like very interesting to listen to, and it's so it's not a rough language in my opinion, and so on. But now, like when I came to Germany and started studying many languages, so I don't have any favorite language right now. And regarding the fruits, the kinds of fruits that you was talking about, this idiom. In my opinion, you can never eat a language, like a fruit, in the form of a language, because there are always something that you can learn, even if you are at C2 level or near native level. I think that I don't even speak my native languages perfectly. So so in my opinion, you can never eat the fruits.
We have to tell the audience that your mom is your father is Bulgarian, and your mom
Bulgarian, my father is Russian. Oh no, the other way around. My mother is Russian, my father is Bulgarian.
Yeah. I told that.
Yeah, you told that. Yeah, I'm confused. So yeah, anyways, and that's why I have two native languages. Like the mother tongue is Russian and the father tongue is Bulgarian. So yeah, so
you
so
told me
that's
about the fruit. Sorry.
So that's why. So you can never eat completely a fruit in the form of a language. You will still improve. You will still have things that you can improve.
There are always margin to improve your language, even though at C2 level. It's completely true.
Yeah.
Well, the two last questions. Innate capacity, innate capability, or product of training, the training product?
training of a language? Or...
Of course, about language related. I mean, do you think that we have an inner capability to learn languages, or do you think by the way that there are a lot of training and a lot of study behind that, or both of them?
Oh, I think that's so to some extent there are both of them. So you can have like a talent for like more talent for one language than for another regarding pronunciation and so on. So it's the case with me as well. So because I, for example, become fluent in some languages like faster than in others and so on. So yeah, the talent for languages exists, but I would say it's only 10% of the whole thing, of the whole phenomenon. 90% is training, and not to forget also to train the pronunciation, for example, of a language. Because for me, it's really important to study or to try, right? To try to that your pronunciation becomes like as close as possible to a pronunciation of a native speaker. So yeah, it's really important, but it's only the part of the whole thing. So I think, yeah, you have to train like the grammar for those who like grammar, right? Pronunciation, and of course to study vocabulary. But a little bit of talent like exists, and I cannot deny that that there is a talent for languages. So I think both of them exist, and like the relationship is 10 to 90%. So 10% talent, 90% training. And that's not only true for languages, it's also true, for example, for music, for any area you are developing or you have developed in. So, yeah.
I understand you, Terrasviram. Okay, and the last question, the necessity to learn languages, the need to learn languages you have. I mean, do you think that the need to learn languages just for surviving or just for taste?
So I learn languages like in order to like improve my knowledge about cultures, for example, in order to have access to more literature in the original language, or to understand the music that I like in the original language. So yeah, it's for taste, maybe, in my opinion. Yeah, and to survive, yes, it could be. It could be because you learn languages in order to communicate. So in my opinion, it's like the better you know the language, the better you can communicate and survive in the society. Yes, so it's both of the things are true, I think.
Yeah, and for me, it's the great honor to have this interview. You are a very kind and transparent person. You are a great value for us, for the HYPIA community, and you are a great value for us as well. I mean, for me, Olga, it's the greatest honor, the greatest honor to have that interview with you. And as always, you are very welcome to keep participating with us. And I mean, and that's I mean, that's the end of the interview. I'm Matias Barmat. I'm Director of Recruitment of HYPIA. Of course, you can follow us in our website, polyglotassociation.org. And it will be until the next interview with the HYPIA, in the International Association of Hyperpolyglots. Cheers.
Thanks for having me. So keep learning languages, keep improving them, keep practicing them. So I wish you all the best. Stay safe and take care.
You're welcome.